Welcome to the Blogger Genius Podcast, brought to you by MiloTree. Here's your host, Jillian Leslie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Blogger Genius. Okay, before I get started, I wanted to announce that on Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 o'clock Pacific, I am going live in my Facebook group, which is called the MiloTree Mastermind Group. And I am discussing this week's episode. I want to pull out the gems. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I want to learn about your businesses. I want us all to really grow together. So if you are a blogger or an online entrepreneur, or you have a shop, please join my Facebook group. It's called the MiloTree Mastermind Group, and if you search for it, you will find it. Okay, for today's episode, I am interviewing Paul Bannister. He works at AdThrive, which is a premium ad network. We use AdThrive for Catch My Party. That is the company that puts the ads on our site. And what's great, of course, about ad income is it's passive. So we don't have to work extra hard to make this money. And I am a big believer in finding ways to build your passive income. What we talk about is what a company like AdThrive is looking for in terms of its publishers, its bloggers, how to create content that will grow your traffic, what are trends in the online ad business, how to set yourself up for success. We talk about privacy. We really get into it. So without further ado, here is my interview with Paul Bannister. Paul, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Jillian. Thanks very much for having me.
So we met in Atlanta at an AdThrive get-together, and you work at AdThrive, and AdThrive is, well, here, I'm going to ask you, what is AdThrive and what do you do there?
AdThrive is the premier ad network for professional bloggers. I work primarily actually with advertisers and advertising technology companies. So I actually don't work with publishers a ton, but I try to be kind of somebody who knows the advertising side and try to kind of bring that knowledge and expertise that we built out to publishers at large.
Okay, so publishers are bloggers, people who create content.
Yep, exactly. And
for you guys, there are really two sides to your business. There is the side where you deal with publishers like Catch My Party and lots of other, and I would say that you have some of the best blogs as part of your ad network. Like, you guys really think a lot about quality. We
are very kind of a little crazy about quality and really try to be super picky and super careful. We want to, we've done we think a really good job so far of keeping the quality level high, and we feel that it's our responsibility for all the existing AdThrive customers that we work with to make sure that anybody new that we ever bring in kind of lives up to that level of quality.
Right. Okay. And then there's the other side of the business, which is you are then going to advertisers like, say, Target or Clorox or Procter and Gamble, those kinds of things, and you are saying to them, hey, advertise on our network.
Exactly.
Okay. And so you deal more with the sales side. Is that right? Or because there are different pieces. There's the technology, there's the sales, there's the publishers.
Yeah, it all bleeds together a little bit. And in a funny way, the technology kind of weaves through all of it because so much of digital advertising today is kind of built on technology, that it's really pretty important to know the guts of how things work on both sides, on the publisher side and on the kind of advertising sales side. So I, try as best I can to stay really up to date on the trends, particularly affecting advertisers and digital advertising.
Got it. Okay, so let's go back for a second and talk about quality, which you were alluding to in terms of the publishers that you guys work with. When you say quality, what does that mean?
It's a great question, and we've actually been talking about that internally. Like what really does it mean? Sometimes I feel like the not great answer, but sometimes it's true, is kind of it when you see it. We want people with original content. We want people whose site looks nice. We want people, not that this is a pure bar of quality per se, but we want people who, blogging or publishing in general is not just a hobby for them. It's something that they take seriously, and it's something that is really, a bigger part of their life. And I think, again, that's not totally quality, but I think it's connected to quality. We want to make sure that the site has kind of, a good history, whether that's from the kinds of content that's on the site, as well as kind of the way that advertising works on the site currently, and just make sure the site feels good. But it's a great question. And we're actually spending time thinking about really how do you really crisply define what quality means?
And isn't there a page view threshold to even get considered for AdThrive?
There is. We have a minimum monthly page views of 100,000, and that definitely, it definitely gets into the realm of, again, what I was saying before, like when you're at 100,000 page views a month. I think for almost anybody at that level, this is something that has turned into more than a hobby for you, and really, more of a profession, even if it's not like your full-time, focus.
Exactly. Okay. So can you then walk me through? I will say, which is, we've been at this with Catch My Party for, 10 years. And we've watched the advertising business change over those 10 years. Could you explain? It is very complicated, for somebody who's been in it and kind of understands technology. It can be complicated. Can you break it down how it works?
It's complicated.
But in terms of even let's start with, you guys go to Target and say, hey, buy some advertising?
We do. And that's definitely a big part of what we do. It may almost be worth talking for a minute about, the concept of an ad network. Okay. Because to some level, there are different kinds of ad networks.
Yep.
There are ones like us that sort of are like connectors. That are trying to really connect as many publishers with as many advertisers. But then there are also lots of specialized ad networks too. Like, for example, there's one that focuses only on healthcare advertisers, and there are ones that focus only on certain kinds of high impact advertising. So we also work with those sorts of companies and try to bring in deals they might have that we might not have. Like, they might have a great relationship with Intel, and we don't happen to, have as much of a relationship with Intel, as an example. So we might work with somebody who's already got that great relationship and bring that demand through them. And those are typically kind of other ad networks or these kind of advertising technology companies. So
Okay.
we, in addition to advertiser direct, we also liaise with all these other kind of networks and technology companies to really, our job is to maximize the value of every impression for a publisher.
Okay.
And we feel that to do that, we've got to work with lots and lots of companies of different kinds to bring in that kind of maximum demand.
Got it. Okay. And then can you explain, though, usually when a blogger starts, they start putting Google ads on their site, like Google AdSense. Mm-hmm. And so how are you guys different from that, or similar, or that kind of thing?
I think we're different in a couple of ways. One is that kind of diversity of advertising demand. When you're working with Google AdSense, you're really just working with the demand that Google is bringing to you, which obviously is a huge amount because Google, is Google. But we are then going beyond Google and working with, dozens of other companies, probably hundreds of other companies across kind of the industry to bring in more demand than Google can on their own. So I think that's kind of where the big step up comes from is us kind of working with a much more diverse pool of advertisers,
right,
and bringing more demand through. We also try to make it more kind of full service for a publisher, whereas I think in a lot of cases AdSense, will basically say here's an ad tag, put it on your page. Whereas we'll be much more consultative and say, here are what we think are the best locations for ads, and let us figure out how this template works for you, and how can video be a part of your experience, and kind of go through the whole, kind of end-to-end process rather than just, here's an ad tag.
Right. And I would say that in our experience with Catch My Party, we have always felt like you guys were our partners, and you have helped us tremendously increase our RPMs, which means revenue per page. You've come to us and said, you know what you could do? If you move this here in your layout, we could put an ad here. And we're like, oh, that's interesting. And you guys, so I feel like it's a win-win, which is, you're making money and we're making money. So it's in both of our interests to figure out how best to optimize our site.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. And definitely that's how we like to try to operate, is trying to figure out things that are ultimately we try to make all of our decisions in terms of like what is best for the publisher. We have the benefit that most of the time it's also great for us, but we always try to really make sure that we're doing the right thing for the publisher first.
Yes, and I will say this too, which is I think you are very sensitive to the publisher. So if I am a publisher and I go, you know what, just load up my site with ads, you'll do it. But if I say, no, you know what, I just want a couple ads on my page, you'll do that.
Exactly.
Like, you're very flexible.
For sure. We're very flexible. We have parameters, particularly at the high end. Like if somebody said, hey, I want you to put 40 ads on my page, we would say no.
Yes.
Because we know that it's bad for that site, but it also like reflects poorly on us. And when we talk to advertisers, like the advertisers also want to know that the sites we're working with are quality. And part of that is having a good, and doesn't need to be conservative per se, but like, realistic ad layout that is not too much. And, neither publishers nor advertisers want to bombard consumers at the end of the day, because they're the most important group of people here, and your readers, your audience. So we want to make sure that like the layout really works for them at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I have to say it's always a balancing act.
Exactly.
David, my husband and partner, and I always debate this because he always wants fewer ads. He's like, and again, there is this fine line, and it is a balancing act.
It really is, and it is figuring out that that balance between revenue and consumer experience, right, and what advertisers need, and it's definitely a balancing act.
Definitely. Okay, so now could you, let's say I have 100,000 followers. I'm not followers, 100,000 page views a month. Like, could I expect to make a living just with ads, or do you feel like that's like a supplemental part, and I need to monetize in other ways as well?
I think at that level, you have to monetize in other ways as well. I mean, I think realistically, almost every publisher we work with wants to, and we think should diversify their revenue streams. Okay. Ads can be a big part of of bringing value to a publisher. But we think it's always good to diversify and always good to look at other options. I think at 100,000, most people are definitely going to want to have a few other revenue streams and figure out ways that they can monetize their audience and their social reach and other components of what they've built up using other channels.
Got it. And in your working with other publishers, what would you say some of the main ways publishers are monetizing today?
It's definitely, one of the interesting things is sort of like we do see some similarities by vertical.
Ooh, interesting.
People who are in the travel space do really well with, obviously, like people do like kind of travel agency work or like affiliate programs for, booking resorts and things like that. Personal finance is sort of similar because it's like, sign up for a credit card and they get a commission from that. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of worlds where like the affiliate world works pretty well. Mm-hmm. Whereas in food or home decor or parenting, we definitely see kind of sponsored content, something that more people do, although we've definitely heard some negativity about that, more recently.
But wait, we have to stop. What is the negativity that you've been hearing?
That sponsored content can be, and we don't do sponsored content, so it's sort of, or do very little of it, so it's not our, purview per se, but that it's complicated for the amount of money that you make. A lot of advertisers they want very custom programs, and they aren't always willing to pay for it, which is one of the reasons that we think kind of standard, banner advertising and video advertising can be great because it's much more turnkey. It's much easier for the publisher and also for the advertiser. Whereas
wait, stop. What do you mean by that? That video, go back.
So, video, if you have a video player on your site and you've got your own videos, putting just, 30-second video ads against that is a nice, easy way to make extra money versus, again, making sponsored content for an advertiser.
Okay, and let me just break that down for people who don't know what that means, which is with AdThrive, they have a special, it looks kind of like like if you've embedded a YouTube video on your page, but it is a way to run ads around your video content. So that way I can put up my own video, let's say, that I didn't make for a brand, I made for myself, and I can figure, because of this ad unit, I can monetize that unit.
Exactly.
Okay. And I would agree with you, and I've heard this on the podcast and reaching out to other bloggers, which is, back in the day, we did a ton of sponsored content, and it was like, it was the Wild West. So the brand would come to us and say, hey, we kind of like, we hear this thing is sponsored content, and why don't you just use our product and just make a recipe with it? And we'd be like, cool. And we'd go make a recipe and we put it up on our blog, and maybe Facebook was around back then. Maybe like Twitter, and we would make a recipe and we'd show it to them, and we would share it on Facebook and Twitter, and and we'd send them the links, and they would send us a check. They'd be like, great, and send us a check. And then over time, brands got smarter. I put smarter in quotes because I'm not sure how much more impactful it became for them. But then they started to ask for more things and ask for reshoots, or ask to show the product in a certain way, or who knows. And it definitely has become more onerous over time. And so I think that's kind of what you were alluding to.
Exactly.
Okay, so now in terms of growing traffic, because again, the more traffic we get at Catch My Party, the more we both benefit. So when you think about that, what would you say your tips are for bloggers to grow their traffic? Like, where is traffic easy to find, if that's possible?
Probably nothing that easy. I think, again, diversification is a big component here. And I think also like trying to pick your battles and be great at something before you're great at everything probably is a good way to think about it. Are you really good at, Pinterest and growing traffic from there? Or have you built a really compelling email newsletter program that you can sign people up for and drive traffic from? Have you really optimized your site well for SEO? What are those channels, and what are you great at already, and kind of like double down on that and get really good at something. Whereas I feel like if you're not good at any of them and you try to kind of do all of it, it might be really complicated. So I think focus probably helps in terms of, each person knowing what they're best at and knowing where to focus their attention, particularly in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And also to figure out where your audience is and show up for them there.
Exactly. Totally makes sense.
Imagine growing your Instagram followers with no work. Highly engaged followers. Now imagine it with Pinterest, Facebook, YouTube. How about new email subscribers? Seriously, no work. This is all possible if you install the Milo Tree pop-up on your blog. David, my husband, and I started our blog, Catch My Party, in 2009. We've since grown it into the largest party ideas site on the web with millions of page views per month. We did it with hard work and our secret weapon, our Milo Tree pop-up, which David built for us. We've grown our Pinterest followers to over 1.3 million and our Instagram followers to over 164,000. And right now, 8,000 other bloggers just like you are using Milo Tree to grow their businesses. With Milo Tree, you can focus on growing one platform or switch between several. But here is the important thing. If you aren't converting your visitors into followers, subscribers, and customers, you're honestly wasting your own traffic. Make this asset, your visitors, work for you. Since we're bloggers, we get bloggers. So we've optimized Milo Tree like crazy. It's a snap to install. It won't slow your site down. It's Google friendly on mobile, and it's so darn cute. You can even add animated sparkles to your pop-up if you like. Sign up now and get your first 30 days for free. Please pause this episode and head to milotree.com to sign up. I know you will thank me. As a bonus, once you sign up, I'm going to send you weekly actionable business tips to help you grow your business. I've been at this a long time and I have a lot to share. Remember, your scarcest resource is not money, it's time. So let Milo Tree free up time for you so you can focus on the other important parts of your business. So what are you waiting for? Hit pause, head to Milo Tree, and sign up today. Okay, so if I'm now optimizing my blog, I keep hearing, or I know this, but kind of rumor has it that site speed matters. Could you talk a little bit about what that means and how ads play a role in that?
Site speed definitely matters, particularly for SEO, but for kind of any kind of traffic. So we spend a lot of time really focused on how can we do more on the ad side. Site speed matters in the sense also that anything you put on a page has an impact on site speed. If you have an article that's 10 paragraphs versus an article with 20 paragraphs, like the 20 paragraph one will be slightly slower because you've just got more paragraphs on the page and you've got more text. Obviously, it's a minor impact, but it has something. So I think there's always this overarching, kind of view a publisher should have of what is on my page and what purpose is it serving, and is it really helping serve my audience better, whether that's ads, whether that's social widgets or other kind of plugins and components of the page, whether it's images. Like, what is the purpose of this? Does my audience care and want this? And making that balance. And again, to the point earlier, we were talking about trade-offs. It's sort of the same thing here. Like, what is the trade-off between adding a new social widget or adding a new ad slot or something else, and how does that counterbalance against site speed? I was going to say, yeah, it's just finding that kind of trade-off point, that balancing point where you as a publisher feel good about where you are from that perspective.
Totally. I used to, when we were starting with Catch My Party, I would just upload photos into our back-end WordPress. And my partner is my husband, David, and he's the technologist. And he one day looked at me and he goes, "What are you doing? You're putting huge photos up on WordPress. Do you know what this does to our site speed?" And he was so pissed. And so, again, like, think about your photos and how big they are. And do you really need to show such a big photo? I like what you said, which is everything you are adding to your site could be affecting site speed. And, really pay attention to that. We also create this widget called MiloTree, and and we use it on Catch My Party. So you better believe we optimize the heck out of it, because the last thing we want to do is impact our own site speed or somebody else's site speed. But a lot of WordPress plugins can really bog your site down.
Exactly. And you don't know how those plugin developers are really how focused they are on site speed.
Exactly.
So it's really, it's incumbent on, each publisher to say, like, to your point, like, what am I using that's really valuable? And then making sure the ones that you are using are really optimized.
And is it because Google wants the searcher to have a good experience? So if they end up on a site and it's slow to load, that person's going to bounce.
Exactly.
I mean, is that the bottom line, what the deal is?
For sure. I mean, Google wants searchers to be satisfied with the results, and satisfaction has a lot of different components to it, and speed is definitely one of them. I mean, Google has said that it's not the biggest ranking factor, and we've done some research of our own that also shows it's not the biggest. But that said, you kind of want to, you want to put your best foot forward, and if site speed is a component, you want to make sure that's great, and we're focused on making it great too.
And I feel like, if you look at all of our attention spans, I don't know about you, but I go to a site and it's slow, boom, I'm out.
Exactly. It makes a big difference to the experience for the user, and that's the most critical thing.
Now tell me then about ads. Like, if I want to put ads up on my site, do I need to be aware, like, does each ad slow my site down?
Each ad definitely has some impact. I would say, like, the sheer function of running ads at all,
right,
going from 0 to 1 is probably the biggest jump, because there's a certain amount of just kind of foundational code that needs to be there to support ads. That's kind of the first step. Once you're adding units, there's definitely an impact, but it's not quite as large anymore. We're working on a lot of things on our side to even mitigate that, where there's different technologies we're using to, like, kind of bundle ads together. So, like, 4 ads go out together. And they really only use the code of what previously was 1. So a lot of things that we're trying to do to optimize those things and make them better. But ads definitely do have an impact, and it is a little bit that binary choice of if I have ads, it's going to have some impact, and how do you work with your ad network to really minimize that?
Could we just, I don't know if you could do this, but I find it fascinating. Like, if I go to a site, how does that ad load? How does it know it's me? And how many places does that information bounce before that ad is served?
That's a big question right now. And if you're reading the news, and there's these antitrust investigations into Google and Facebook and other things, and they're the biggest companies in this space, but there's a lot of parties involved in the process of getting an ad up on a site.
Like, it's shocking. Like, not even a second. I mean, it's just like hundredths of a second or thousands of a second. It's just like data is traveling all over the place.
Exactly. And it's like data, to your point, that knows that it's you, and then knows certain things about you. And then a whole bunch of advertisers are bidding and saying, I want to show this ad and I want to show this ad. So the amount of things that happen in under a second, and many of the elements, to your point, are milliseconds, is really pretty unbelievable.
Yeah. And then your Zappos ad shows up with the same shoes that you were just looking at.
and probably bought a week ago or something.
Exactly. And it's
they're still selling
creepy,
something.
but it's weird. Yeah, I saw a diagram. I don't know if you guys showed it, but it's like what happens when you go to a website and that ad is going to be served, and how that information is traveling all over the internet to serve you that specific ad. It's
Yeah.
shocking.
Yeah, exactly. There's a tremendous number of companies, and there's positives and negatives to all of that. I mean, I think the more company, to the point I said before, like the more companies that somebody works with, the better chances of kind of getting a really, well-paying ad for a given slot and showing a relevant ad to a user, versus the less that are out there, probably the less relevant and the less, demand there is ultimately. But there's a lot of, momentum in the industry to try and clean things up and make it so, if not necessarily there are fewer parties, at least that those parties that we know and can trust all of them, and we know they're operating in a good and legitimate way and using the data in the right ways.
Got it. Okay, so if I were looking for an ad network, let's say if I have over 100,000, I personally, this is just, my little plug for you guys. I definitely recommend people reach out to you guys. But overall, like, what would you look for in an ad network? Like, what tells you, oh, these guys are legit. These guys have my back.
I think, there's definitely a lot of reviews out there with people talking about different ad networks. And I appreciate your little mini review of us there, which is great. So I think it's, reading about what people are saying about the ad networks. I think it's a good idea to look at some of the other sites that a given ad network is running. There's a really cool tool called Built With, that's a Chrome browser plugin that will show you for any given site like what plugins it's running, but also show you what ad network it runs.
Oh,
So when you're on some of your favorite sites that you look at, you can just click the Built With button and you can see what ad network they're running with and just get an idea of, do I feel comfortable with the amount of ads that is on this site? Would I feel okay if these ads were on my site? And just thinking through those sort of things. So I do think it's a little bit of that diligence of like, what is this ad network doing, and do I feel that that's a fit for what I want to be doing?
Oh, I like that. Again, we take our businesses really seriously, and your ad network really matters.
It really is. It's a big revenue stream for a lot of publishers, and also it's a big part of the user experience. So you want to make sure that all those parts are great.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and as I said, like my partner David is a technologist, and I think he really feels very comfortable with what you guys are doing. So, you get brownie points from him too.
Thanks,
okay,
David,
so
well.
if in fact, what would you say? So, bloggers have so many hats that they wear. And if they want to build a business on the internet, kind of where would you have them focus?
I think, a little bit what I was saying before, like it is picking, the focus that you're great at. It's hard to generalize for many people. What content are you great at creating? What content, have you found an audience for that you understand? What traffic source can you be great at optimizing for? Like, what are those things that you've just got the right DNA for?
Mm-hmm.
We see publishers that are phenomenal at social, but not so great at SEO. And like, that can be a fine combination.
Mm-hmm.
Or the reverse can be true, amazing at SEO and really, can't get social traffic. And that can be fine. So I think it is like knowing yourself and knowing what you're good at and knowing what motivates you is probably the most important thing, because if you're motivated and you feel good about it and you are doing well there, like success will reinforce itself.
And tell me your thoughts on video.
I think video is huge. I mean, it's more and more what consumers want. I think it's something that any publisher should really try, even in a small way, to produce some video content and try it out. Different people react differently to different kinds of content, and there are different times when different types of content are necessary. I remember a couple of years ago, like I'm not a big video watcher myself, but I remember a couple of years ago, I was cooking Thanksgiving dinner. I was the assigned family member, so I was cooking Thanksgiving for 20 people or something.
Okay.
And I was going to do a butterfly turkey, which is like cutting the backbone out and all this complicated stuff. And I watched 25 videos about how to do this because I really wanted to know process and get it right. And that's where, video content was great for something like that. So I think it's, thinking about what does your audience want and what do they want in that particular scenario? And video can be a big part of really getting the right content for your audience.
That's cool. Okay, what about AdThrive right now are you excited about, or what's coming down the pike in the future of ads, like in advertising, and especially too with all of these shifts, like is Google going to be broken up? That kind of thing. Like, how is this all impacting the future of ads? Are you positive on the future of
I
ads?
am positive, and I think we are doing a lot of great things to get ready. Like, we really try to make it a piece of our DNA to be focused on the future, and really thinking about what's coming next. And next means 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 3 years from now, and really looking at those things that are further afield, to make sure that we are future-proofing kind of what we do for our publishers.
Okay.
So that's really a big focus of ours. There's a lot of flux in the online ad industry right now. We talked about antitrust. That's a big thing that's happening that could have positive or negative effects for publishers. You've probably seen, recently Firefox started blocking a lot of tracking, just like Safari's done for a couple of years now. That's going to have a slightly negative impact for some things, although we're working on things to mitigate that. There's a lot of questions about what will happen to cookies in general, and how that tracking that we talked about earlier, how that will work. So we're building a lot of things to kind of make the tracking better where it makes sense, to mitigate with different kinds of advertising and targeting, and figuring out more things we can do to really get ahead of these trends before they happen. So again, so we can protect our publishers when, whether times are good or times are bad.
I love that. Okay, Paul, if anybody in my audience, let's say, has some questions, like how can they reach out to you?
Best thing for us probably is to reach out to our general mailbox, because then it can be directed to the right people for everything.
Okay.
Which is info@adthrive.com.
Okay.
And then, if I'm the right person, I'm happy to be a part of the conversation. But there are a lot of things that I don't know the most about, and we've got experts in lots of areas that can help people out.
Awesome. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Jillian. It was great.
I hope you guys liked the episode. I hope you understood a little bit more about how ads work and what kind of content to be creating to grow your traffic. And remember, Mondays, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 o'clock Pacific, I will be discussing this episode with you. And I really welcome you to join my Facebook group, the Milo Tree Mastermind group, because I want to hear what you have to say. I want to answer any questions you might have about ads or about anything in regards to growing your business. So please come meet me, and I will see you here again next week.